Hey, everybody. Welcome to Inside Texas Football, powered by InsideTexas.com. InsideTexas.com is the premier place to get all of your Longhorn data, talk, conversation, and awesome breaking news. You'll love it all. Come join. Doesn't cost much. Well worth your time. And then make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us. And it moves us up those shadowy algorithms, which dictate all of our lives and life rhythms, Ian. Ian, what's going on, man? You ready to do some quick hitters? Because the people gave us some questions from the Inside Texas board, and we're going to answer a bunch of them.
Yeah, I thought of like 7 different time-wasting things I could open with, but we have a lot of questions, so we can just get to it.
You'll put the time wasting into your answers to the questions.
Yeah, it'll get in there.
I love it. All right. I'm going to read off the first one. Ian, I may have you read off the second, but I'm going to start you off. Over under, that's not OU, by the way, but over under 9.5 wins next year.
I'm going to go over. Not super confident. I think it's a good number. So I'll lean towards over. I'm guessing, I'm sure this will bleed into something else, but I'm guessing that the team's roster is not complete for next year. So
I would guess that as well. That's why I take the over. I'd be more inclined to think 10 wins than 9. Obviously, win at Ohio State, and I think this is very achievable. But
But even if they don't, I had noticed. I was talking to Connor about this. They have a bye before the Georgia and the Florida games.
Yep.
Which are the 2 hardest games on the schedule, aside from the opener. So even if they drop that game, they might be able to get it back. Yeah,
I mean, there's a world where we split those games and we're still fine and on track to win 10. So over wins next year, 9.5. Ian and I are thinking we're not going to be holding serve and not active in the spring portal. I think we're going to bring in more talent. So we're comfortable both saying the over. Next question, Ian, if you will, do the honors, sir.
What is our, meaning Texas, win-loss projection for next year if we stand pat on the current roster? Yes, I know that's unlikely. So I'm glad this came next because this was exactly what we were just getting into. I think with the current roster, I would lean more on the under because there's just a few things that could go wrong and everything would go wrong. Like nobody emerges at running back to carry the full load and be a star. Jordan Washington gets hurt and fall and tears his knee.
Let's not get all specific and like let's not put it out in the universe. Come on, Ian. I'm not a superstitious person, but come on.
I don't know if there's any. Those are just too obvious. Ryan Wingo doesn't pan out, and everybody else is a freshman, an outside receiver. Those are all 3 things that are like too good a chance of happening, and any of them would really sink the 9.5.
I concur. If we stand absolutely pat, no additions in the spring, I think we're pretty likely to be a 9-3 football team in the regular season.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Might not get into the playoffs. Depends what that 9-3 looks like, right?
Right. It would really, yeah.
Try to do the math right now.
We don't have the guaranteed spots for the SEC yet, right?
No. Those are proposals for 2026.
There'd be likely to be other 9-3 SEC teams that could potentially have a better resume depending on where those losses fell on the Texas schedule.
Or you could have the 2025 version of the Big Ten upstart who has a very favorable schedule.
Right.
Illinois, right? Keep your eyes on the Illinois Illini, folks, if you want to look for the next Indiana potentially. All right, next question, sir. Do y'all see Jonah Williams eventually doing football full-time in college? Ian, I'll take a crack at this, and then I'm curious what you think.
Okay.
Jonah Williams, of course, is the outstanding safety, really incredible athlete if you've watched any of his huddle, any of his film. Really good baseball player as well. I think this boils down to 2 things. How good is he at baseball? And how much does he love baseball? Because all things being equal, if you love the 2 sports equally and you're equally good at both, or maybe even better at baseball is a safer, more profitable career. And baseball overdrafts and overvalues really athletic guys because their belief is we can teach them some of the skills of baseball. We can't teach guys to be 6'3", 215 when they're full grown and run the bases like a freaking cheetah. What are you thinking?
Well, and he can pitch too.
Yeah, apparently he's got a cannon. Which even if he can't pitch, that means he's probably a guy who's like going to catch the fly at the wall of the outfield and like throw a dude out at home, right?
I do wonder about reaction time because correct me if I'm wrong, but the hand-eye coordination and reaction time is not at all the same as other athletic traits like hips, speed, explosiveness, things like that.
Well, not to go all Moneyball on you or Sports Gene on you with David Epstein, but they've tested baseball players and they have above average reaction times. What they're really good at, what they're really good at is reading pitches and anticipation.
That's my point, though.
Yeah.
A really good football athlete may or may not have that, right?
You have to log lots of pitches. You have to watch lots of pitches. Or if you're a pitcher, you have to pitch a lot to get good at painting the corner and that kind of stuff. But basically, my answer is, what does he love and what's he really good at? Because the truth is, all things being equal, all things tied, let's say, and I don't think it will ever be tied. People tend to have their love. Baseball's probably the more lucrative, safer career. But football has its appeal, right?
Well, apparently he likes football more.
Yeah, but you never know.
But I see two counter currents in this, and I don't know which one wins. One is that any of the positions he's likely to play in football may eventually demand that he gives it more time.
Yeah.
Safety, or if he spins it on to linebacker because he's a big kid, then it's like you're not going to want to be moonlighting as a pitcher while doing those. But on the other side of the ledger, he can throw low 90s and is left-handed.
Yep.
So that it's like the exact opposite. Like you could have a long career in baseball as a bullpen guy if you can throw strikes throwing 90 left-handed. So I think he wants to do football, but I think for him to do football may require eventually that he go full-time. And when he does so, that could be very difficult because he'd be giving up that other path.
Agreed.
So.
Well, selfishly, I hope he does football full-time.
Same.
All right, next question, Connor. What might Moore and Simmons on the field at the same time look like? And of course, we're talking about Trey Moore and Colin Simmons. Trey Moore returning to Texas, which is great news. Colin Simmons is going to get his first full offseason of college strength and conditioning. God knows what that's going to transform that monster into. What might they both on the field at the same time look like, Ian? And when might they both be on the field together?
I had a dream early in the offseason of moving Trey Moore to like weak side to will linebacker and just letting him blitz a lot because I think that's what he needs to do in the NFL. Then I looked at the edge depth chart on the weak side, and I was like, oh, they're not going to be able to do that because everybody transferred out. But Texas has three main packages, right? They have the base package where they play with it's either a 4-3 or a 3-4, depending on how you want to count it. And they could both share the field in that. Then they have the nickel package, which they probably spend most of their time in.
I was going to say, it's funny. Typically, historically, you'd say your base package. That means what you're in most of the time.
Right.
The base package just means traditional package, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they'll play that anytime they play a team in like with two tight ends or a fullback or something. They'll do that some. The base nickel, 2-4-5, they do not share the field in that normally. Maybe they could in some games this year, but that's not normally how it works. It would be Burke or Vosick opposite one of them, and you'd rotate. But then the third down package, which Texas actually played in a ton in last year, the dime, they share the field in that. So 2 out of the 3 main packages in the defense, they are on the field together and were last year. That's already quite a bit.
What's the challenge that they pose to an opposing offense?
Pass rush.
Yeah. Like withering pass rush.
Nobody has a tackle. Almost nobody has two good tackles that can both play on an island against those guys.
Yeah, and the thing about Moore and Simmons is they're both very good at getting the initial flush, but then they're excellent, particularly Simmons, but Trey Moore is no slouch either, at running a guy down.
Yeah.
You saw what he did to Carson Beck at the end of the first half in the SEC title game. Colin Simmons is making tackles 50 yards down the field, coming from the opposite side of the field on Trevor Etienne.
So does Hill.
Yeah.
Hill is basically another edge on the field playing off the ball.
The old, saw in football is you line up when you get a bunch of kids and you're playing like, youth football, you line them all up and you have them run and you take your 11 fastest kids and go, hey, you're the defense. Right?
Yeah.
Moore, Simmons, Hill, just having all those kinds of guys out on the field at the same time, just devastating. And they make tackles and they make plays that you just otherwise won't make with a guy who's 2/10 of a second slower or doesn't have that reactive lateral quickness that they do. I just think they're greyhounds out there running around causing havoc. And if Texas can stop the run sufficiently, they're going to be sharing the field together perhaps quite a bit.
There's also that one team that's on the schedule that has no tight ends to speak of.
Yeah.
And just hired an air raid offensive coordinator that could play them together in base nickel.
Yeah, just the whole game.
The whole game.
Yeah. And honestly, I would play them together if a team doesn't get big and exploit them. I would just play them together. Like, why wouldn't you? And then I'd make Vosick and Burke part of the rotation. I like how we look outside. All right.
Yeah, they could both. Burke and Vosick could both back up the weak side spot.
100%.
There's no problem with that.
And we've got some really promising freshmen coming up behind them. We're looking very good at edge.
That's an interesting idea. They could just start a small jack and a small buck and say, prove that we shouldn't.
Yeah, Colin Simmons is a guy on paper you should be able to run on. Not really. He's too quick. He's too strong. He's too sudden and explosive. You think, well, he's 6'2", 250. We should be able to do something to him in the run game. If you can't get your hands on him and he just knives in the backfield and hits you for a 3-yard loss, that can get real old for your offense.
Will Anderson is like that. You remember Alabama, Will Anderson played at like 245 or 250, and Alabama would line him up as a 4-eye inside shade.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, that's dumb, just run at him. And then they wouldn't touch him.
Yeah.
That guy.
100%.
That was peak draft Twitter when they were like, this guy's not even a true edge. He doesn't play on the edge. Okay.
A lot of people showed their ass on NFL draft Twitter when it came to Will Anderson. I think people can ignore the forest for the trees sometimes. How a player is deployed is not their responsibility. It's what they do when they're deployed. And Will Anderson wrecked shop every week. All right.
He had 11 sacks last year.
We're supposed to be disciplined on this, and you and I are indulging Will Anderson takes. That's all right. Part of the charm of the deep dive. Let's see. Next question, sir. What are the odds Archie Manning plays for us in 2026? Of course, that's Arch Manning. Archie.
I was about to say exceptionally low.
Yes, Archie will not be playing for us. So 2026, of course, suggests, could he just be a one-and-done guy? No, I don't think he will be. What do you think the odds are he plays for us in 2026? I'd say very, very high. What about you, Ian?
Very, very high. The same people that are telling you that he's a one-and-done because of his talent are the same people that told you there was a 0% chance that him and Quinn would both be on the roster for this last season.
You mean all the national sports writers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in their defense, they're applying the standard wisdom that had already been established by the behavior of like dozens of other blue chip quarterbacks.
Yep.
So if you just follow that, if you recognize that pattern and applied it to this situation, you're like, this is the easiest take I could ever get off and look smart in the future with. But Arch was the exception. So
yeah, when you make those takes, you might want to look at the name on the back of the jersey and consider that he's got a level of counsel and a level of development and longer term prospects. He's got good people guiding him, probably arguably the best that you could have literally in your camp. And also, they actually are somewhat concerned, not with just his development as an athlete and as a quarterback, but as an actual human being. So
the big one that people missed was the Cooper part.
Yes.
Where Cooper had football taken away from him in an instant. And so they are especially, I think they were all made wiser by that experience. But certainly Cooper's son is not going to overlook that. So
I agree 100%. You have to, you got to prepare yourself for whatever life brings at you. And when you're buying a house, the most important financial decision of your life, you better have your Manning family supporting you. You better have an elite team. The first draft pick on that elite team, Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. He does mortgages all over the great state of Texas, though he lives in the lovely metropolis of Greater Houston. He can help you anywhere in Texas. He can help you anywhere outside of Texas. He's licensed in other states. And if he's not licensed in your state, he'll just help you out. Like, he'll literally guide you through the process and help you learn the things you need to say to the mortgage guy you're working with to get the best possible deal. I think that's pretty cool. And that's what he does for fellow Longhorns. Former National Merit Scholar. He's got a law degree, really sharp guy, really hardworking. Go with the guy who can bid your deal to 70 different lenders, not Big Bank USA, which will bid you to exactly one lender. Call Gabe. He'll treat you right. 832-557-1095. All right. Interesting question here, Ian. So we probably touched on this in different ways, but let's try to encapsulate this. What will be the biggest changes in Texas's offense with Arch taking over for Ewers? So we know some of the basic differences in terms of physicality, athleticism, preferences, aggressiveness, things like that. What do you think? Take a hack at this. What do you think will be the differences in the offense? So we're not just describing the difference between Arch and Ewers physically or dispositionally. We're also talking about, are we going to run a little bit of a different offense? How's it going to look different with Arch Manning calling the shots?
I think it'll work better.
Go on. I'm intrigued.
I don't, there's a lot of things that are pretty basic in the Texas playbook with Sark that I think Arch is going to be better at than Quinn. So the play action bombs, hitting those on time on the post routes is clearly better with Arch Manning. I mean, maybe we'll see that it was only because he played down competition when he played that he hit more of them, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think his ability to go beyond shot plays and get deeper into progressions is going to be better because his footwork is better, and I think he sees things a little more clearly than Ewers. I don't know if the misdirection screens where the quarterback is like pulling the defense one way and then like throwing up off flat. Ewers was so good at those. I don't know that Manning will match that.
Also, I'd have to say for Ewers, like the top 1% of quarterbacks I've ever seen throwing the little float pass out in the flat to a running back at an angle.
Yeah.
Like, it hits the guy not just in the upfield shoulder, but like literally in the correct hand for that guy to catch it on the move, never has to hesitate. He's not reaching behind it, like not reaching in his ankles. Like it's a skill that I think is very underrated. So even if Arch is good at it, he's not going to be as good as Ewers.
I don't know if he is actually even that good at it.
We don't know yet, really.
I saw a couple where he didn't throw that particularly well. And it felt like ULM. It felt like Sark told Arch going into that game, you're not going to scramble. You're not going to do Arch stuff. I'm going to make you get to the check down and throw the check downs and do these other boring on schedule stuff. And it was a little shaky. And then towards like some point in the third quarter, Sark was like, okay, we need to bury this team now. This game's gone on long enough. And he started calling in some like RPOs where he would throw like slants down the field into smaller windows. And they dialed up a couple of those and scored in like 2 seconds. And then it was
let me ask you about that specifically, because RPOs were a Ewers strength.
Yes and no, right? The tipped passes.
Beyond the friction sort of stuff that would happen, typically if he got a window and a sight line, his RPO game was pretty on point.
Yeah.
Is Arch going to be as good at executing that?
I think he might be a little better. Just because I think his feel for getting the ball out of the pocket and seeing things quickly. Like sometimes I would watch them warm up before games up in the press box, and you would see like where they both practice like a mesh in a skinny post or something. And Arch often hit his receiver earlier in the pattern than Quinn did. But that might also be the quicker release, because I mean, he didn't even have to read anything on the drill. But
yeah, if you have the ball here already, the ball gets out quicker rather than if it's at your hip or sort of behind you or held in random spots.
There's probably some RPOs that he's not going to be as good at Quinn at because of the ability to throw off platform and the touch on those sideline throws you're talking about. And I think there's other RPOs where he's going to be a little better.
I'd say another thing that's a friction for your offense and its overall efficiency. And one of the reasons I think we had some inefficiencies in our offense last year is just pocket presence, pocket awareness.
Yeah.
Not so much necessarily being able to scramble for 8 yards when you need to, which he's going to do, but just stepping to the right spot or shrugging off a hand that hits you as the guy goes by, not blundering into the sack. That's, 2nd and 18 kind of derails you.
Yeah.
Although Ewers pretty gifted at like 3rd and 14, like layering in an intermediate ball. But I don't think you want to build your offense around that prospect. You'd rather see a lot of 2nd and 3 and 3rd and 2 than, an unnecessary sack off of play action. I feel like Arch is going to bail us out of more of those, even if his overall offensive line isn't as good.
I think so too. He may also, another area where it could get worse is I don't know if he will protect the ball as carefully as Quinn did.
Throwing it?
Specifically throwing it. I guess Quinn didn't necessarily protect it that well as carrying it. Yeah. But in terms of decisions, like Quinn would throw away the ball all day. He had no problem throwing it. Somebody's feet, throwing it away, live to see another down. And Arch has shown more of a gunslinger approach.
I think he'll put the ball in peril more often.
Yes.
With some upside.
Yes.
No risk it, no biscuit. But also sometimes you don't get the biscuit, and you just get the risk it. I think we'll see that. I think Texas fans sometimes forget Ewers is, other than Sam Ehlinger, and it's very close, the least intercepted quarterback in Texas history per capita, per attempt. Some of that is his care with the football. Some of that is where he chooses to throw the football or not throw the football, right? Sometimes you do have to kind of put the ball in peril to back the defense off and also allow your receiver to make a play downfield. He was less inclined to make those throws. I think Arch is going to make lots of those throws. Sometimes when you're like, no, but you'll get lots of yes, too.
Yep.
Next question, Ian, read it to us.
Why does a Sark-led team have an imbalance of talent favoring the defensive side of the ball? So real quick, just to put a number on this, the 2024 FEI ratings, Texas finished 18th in the country in offensive FEI.
Yep.
And 3rd in defense.
Yeah, and barely 3rd. So the rankings create more space than you'd think.
Yes.
Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Texas were basically considered equal
They
more.
were within the second digit after the decimal
Yes.
of
So
those two.
more or less this same elite defense.
Yeah.
Offensively, Texas, good, but not elite. Fair?
Yeah. Yeah. But if we could rewrite the question, we would say there was an imbalance of production. The NFL took all 5 skill talents from the 2023 offense, and it's going to take another few in 2024, as well as both offensive tackles, maybe the center, maybe the left guard.
Oh, no. I'm pretty sure both will get drafted. Yeah.
And the quarterback for sure will be drafted.
Oh, yeah.
And the tight end will be drafted.
And blue.
And blue will be drafted. So I don't think you would say that there's any problem with lack of talent on offense.
Yeah, there's a difference between production and talent. And I think, by the way, we're going to see some defensive players get drafted as well. But I think there's an imbalance of production because on offense, we're having to start over each year, sort of in totality. There's a little quicker uptake on defense with new personnel. It's not hard to integrate Trey Moore into your defense, right? It's not hard to integrate Andrew Makuba. It turns out, thank God, that was an amazing scout, that this guy who was not being properly utilized at Clemson was arguably the premier deep safety in college football, right?
Yeah.
So great job, Texas. Good scout. Nice job. But it's still easier to incorporate that guy than to install all these new skill players at wide receiver, et cetera. When those all change out wholesale. I also think Ewers' injury and some of his play played a role in the offense not fully achieving. Bond, a big factor down the stretch, not really panning out.
Yes.
Got injured pretty clearly. He got well later and then was more focused on sort of the next level than advancing Texas, to put it nicely. So I guess that's the fundamental issue. But let's turn this into a little praise for Steve Sarkisian. Sark is a total football coach. Unlike many offensive-minded guys, he cares about the defense as much as the offense. Doesn't mean he participates in the defense, but he would rather win a game, in my opinion, 34-10 than 56-31.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he cares about total football. And I think he's a great program builder in that regard. I think he sees complementary football as a thing as well. He doesn't do things on offense to hang the defense out to dry. He doesn't do that. So I think that's in a way, it's sort of praise of Sark overall. The more interesting thing to me is, why aren't we getting elite offenses at Texas, even with some of the talent?
I think one of the big things is the tight end quarterback relationship, which is it's an offense built around play action and running the ball. Like Sark always wants to be able to run the ball. But then for the last 2 years, the tight end has been a really good receiver who was not a particularly forceful blocker. And the quarterback added nothing with his legs. So when you're talking about blocking the 6th defender in the box, neither the quarterback nor the tight end were elite at it. And so anything like short yardage, got to have it runs, or red zone, then the speed and the skill and the play designs didn't help Texas anymore, and they couldn't just impose their will.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big factor. Like, I mean, the inability of this offense for the last 2 years to be good in the red zone is probably the difference in being elite in offensive production numbers, right?
Yeah. Also big plays.
What do you mean?
I would say there's a little bit of a paucity this year in big plays down the field. They were sporadic.
Yeah.
And some of that was the coordination of the passing game. Some of that was some of the sacks that we had untimely against certain teams, right?
Quinn being hurt again.
Hurt, definitely played a factor. And then, frankly, our offensive line, we had, whether by personnel or by training or both, didn't have guys who moved guys off the football when they needed to do so. And I think that's larger than just the tight end position at that point. You know, when you're running inside on the 3-yard line, your tight end is just, his job is to screen. He's not, we're not expecting him to pancake a guy in the back of the end zone like Gronk. We're just saying, hey, dude, keep that defensive guy from firing inside and making a play. Hey, center, guard, tackle. This is you. If you displace them, we will score. If you don't displace them, we will not score. Or we can flip out wide to Trey Wisner around the end.
They were really built for so like I pointed out in 2023 that the center left guard combo was maximized for pass protection and big plays and not running the ball.
Yep.
And that I think that got a little better in 2024, but it was still true.
How much will Arch's legs simply in those moments open up everything?
I think a lot, depending on how much they use it. And I suspect they're going to use it quite a bit.
Probably slanted towards the Floridas and Georgias and Ohio States.
Yeah.
Not just an every week fixture.
And yeah, for sure. And then I think in the red zone in general, although not against, who are the UTSA. Probably don't need to do it against UTSA. That'll make a big difference. We'll see how tight end even shakes out too. It's possible tight end is better at blocking this year, depending on what they do there. Jordan Washington, I think, could be a better blocker than Gunnar Helm or Jatavian Sanders if he's able to learn this offseason who specifically he's supposed to block.
His physical development has been huge, but I think he's a little young to be really strong yet. So we'll see.
He seems naturally powerful, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a 195-pound high school senior, and I think he's already 240. Right?
Was he really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a skinny basketball guy.
Oh, my gosh.
But amazingly, Ian, I don't know if you've ever heard this from me, but if you're really big with a big frame and you're young and you're an elite athlete, you can eat food and you can lift weights, and weight suddenly appears on you. It's a miracle. All right, Ian, any closing thoughts?
I was asking my wife, who's more fitness savvy than I am, I was like, is it possible for me to gain muscle weight and cut fat at the same time? Like have a caloric deficit that allows me to lose weight while also being able to add muscle? And she did some numbers for me, and she told me how much of my diet should be protein in order to achieve that result. And I was like, don't even bother looking it up. I eat plenty of protein. That's not going to be a problem. And then she told me the number, and we calculated what that would look like over the course of several meals. And it was daunting.
It's 200 grams a day, something like that?
No, it was like half that, actually. But
okay.
It was still like when you added it up, like, okay, I ate a couple drumsticks for dinner. How much is that? And it was like, no.
Yeah, drumsticks ain't going to get you there, my man.
Nope.
You got to break out some protein powders and some steaks.
Yeah, those liquid protein is.
You got to get the Cartman Weight Gainer 2000.
I can see now why those are so essential to fitness enthusiasts.
All right, folks. Thank you for that fine divergence. This has been the Deep Dive with Ian Boyd. It's been a pleasure to answer your questions. And I think, unless we have any interceding events worth commentary, I think we're going to try to do this again, Ian, because we had a ton of questions from the board, and we'll try to knock out anywhere between 5 to 10. And I think it'll be a fun way to approach the offseason. So for Ian Boyd, I'm Paul Wadlington saying thank you so much for joining us on this Deep Dive.